Hey folks, welcome back. I want to talk a little bit more about something I was talking about the other day is tools, gimmicks, and gadgets, that sort of thing. And I only talked about a couple of items and that pertain mostly to, training aids and stuff that people use. But I think it goes a lot further than that. There's a lot more things out there that people get sucked into buying because they think they need them. And, they don't do your horse any good. And they don't even do you any good. They're there for the people to make money off of because there's always somebody looking for a shortcut, an easy way out. And so lots of people manufacture all kinds of products that don't do a darn bit of good. And they are just, as I say, tools, gimmicks, and gadgets. Now, there's a lot of things, even in the training that, you think, well, it makes the horse move, does what I want it to do. Most of them are actually just something to compensate for poor horsemanship. That's really what most of the gimmicks are for. And, even things like riding crops and dressage whips and stuff. Apparently in certain competitions, you actually get points just for carrying one with you. I have no idea why. It makes absolutely no sense. If you're not going to use it, why do you have it with you? I've also seen firsthand, horses that wouldn't listen to their rider, but as soon as they carried that dressage whip, the horse goes, oh, they're serious, I got to do what they're told. But in fact, you're just getting the horse to do something out of fear because they're afraid of that whip, and you're not solving the problem. The problem is that the horse doesn't respect you enough to listen to you without that whip. And like I said, a gadget like that it's a band-aid to cover up poor horsemanship. Now, I'm going to go through a few items that I didn't mention before. Spurs, for one. Now, a lot of people get really there's different camps in spurs. People that think they're okay, people that think they're bad. Some people get really upset when they hear the word spur. They automatically think of that nasty star wheel thing that can rip the flesh right off a horse. Fact of the matter is, there's actually a lot of different kinds of spurs, and I'm not advocating them. I don't own a set, never have, and I have never used them. And I don't think they're necessary. And if you think you need to use them, you're doing something wrong. But there's a lot of different kinds that are referred to as blunts or bumper spurs and stuff. There's one that has a little affair that attaches to your heel, and it's actually on the inside, and it looks more like thick wire, just a ripple of thick wire, so you can touch the horse with the side of your heel without moving your foot much. Now, I don't think that's necessary because, I can touch my horse with one finger and make her move. Actually, I'm not even touching her right now. See? So, do I need spurs? I don't think so. There's a couple reasons for using those bumper spurs. Again, poor horsemanship, and it comes down to pride and ego, too, is if you got a horse that, some people have said, oh, my horse is dead-sided, I got to use something, to cue him, to get him to move. If your horse is dead-sided, it should be retrained to be more sensitive. Also, it may be an indication that the horse simply doesn't respect you and isn't listening to you. Either way, you're trying to mask a problem or mask a symptom of a problem with a gimmick. The other one is the bumper spurs that go on the inside of your heel are so that in certain competitions and such, the judges can't see your cues. You can actually cue the horse with your heel without actually turning your foot. Well, that doesn't do the horse any good, and it doesn't do you any good as a rider. It impresses people that you don't even know. As to, makes you look good. It's all about you. It's not about the horse, and it's not about your horsemanship skills whatsoever. So that's one more thing. Same thing, and that's another thing is, like I said, with the dead-sided thing, this also it goes, with bits. I don't know how many times I've heard people say, the horse isn't listening to the bit, I need a harsher bit. No, you don't, because it's not the bit that the horse isn't listening to, it's you. The bit isn't the problem. I don't use a bit, so I don't advocate using them at all. But that said, there's some real huge misunderstanding about bits, and a lot of people justify their use of bits because, much like up here, in my particular area. I don't think there's a single competition or show you can get involved in that doesn't require the use of a bit. They're mandatory. And that's the excuse a lot of people use for using them is, oh, well, I have to. Well, no, you don't have to. You don't have to compete. You don't have to go to those shows. You don't have to take part in that nonsense because it's not about the horse. It's not about good horsemanship. It's a show. That's all it is. And people use gimmicks because they get told to. Around here, like I said, I think the only thing you can do is in-hand halter class that doesn't require a bit. And they even tell you, depending on the age of your horse, what type of bit you have to use, because they automatically assume at a certain age the horse is more educated and can move up to a different bit. This horse here, I only started her under saddle last year. She's 17 years old. Am I going to stick a curb bit in her? Not likely. In fact, I don't use one at all. But that's, they would tell me that I have to use one at that age. They also have some rules that basically advocate starting horses far too young, because they tell you that you can use a snaffle as a 2-year-old, I believe it is, and by the time they're 4 or something like that, they're supposed to be into a curb bit, which, says that they're advocating starting a horse at 2 and that it should be well trained and well educated by 4. That's an entirely another issue to talk about altogether, but horses aren't skeletally mature until close to 6 years of age, so they're just advocating animal abuse by telling you to start a horse at a young age, and I don't go for that. But that is an entire another subject. So again, a bit is a gimmick as far as I'm concerned. If you can't, a lot of people say, well, I only use a bit because it's just a communication device. I'm not hurting the horse with it. If you need a bit to communicate with your horse, you're doing something wrong. You should be able to communicate with your horse without using a bit at all. I can ask her to do anything I want, and she'll do anything I want without a bit. Why do I need a bit? I don't need a bit to communicate with my horse. So it's just another gimmick for poor horsemanship, or an excuse, or whatever. And like I said, a lot of people say that they got to use one for whatever they're involved in. It's not an option. Fair enough, whatever. That's your choice, and that's still not about the horse. That's about you, your ego. You want to win, you want to compete, you want to show, you want to do whatever, and the horse pays the price for it by sticking a hunk of metal in its mouth. Another thing is, and this is another one I find rather absurd, is I don't believe in shoes either. And again, another subject for pros and cons of shoes, but I could go on forever on that one. I don't use shoes. I don't believe in them. But let's stick to one specific type, is sliders for the back feet. Reining horses particularly have what they call sliders on their back feet. They're a shoe that is specifically designed so that the horse can do a skid stop without hurting its back legs. It allows it to slide. Now, in the real world, there's no practical use for a slide stop that I know of. Maybe there is, but I've never seen one. And I had one horse that could do a slide stop, and that didn't work well. Not in the real world, because when she tried stopping barefoot in a pasture, she stopped really fast, and much faster than I did. So in the real world, there's not really any use for a slide stop unless you're in a reining competition, in which, again, your competition, your pride, your ego, the horse is paying the price for it, and it's doing something that's unnatural. A horse does not do a slide stop in the wild. There's nothing wrong with a horse that stops quickly, that stops good. You want a horse with good brakes, but that's just silliness. And it's another gimmick. You're putting something on that foot to compensate for something that you're doing that is completely unnatural for the horse. People say you got to use them because you're going to hurt the horse otherwise. Well, that's true, you would. But you shouldn't be training the horse to do a slide stop in the first place, because there's no practical application for it other than showing. And, there's lots of good trainers out there that really do care about horses, and they're actually very good at what they do. But they give in to the pressure of the clients, and the client says, I want a reining horse trained, this is what you're going to do, and they'll do it. And unfortunately, even really good horsemen end up training horses to do silly things like that. That's just one more thing. Sliders. Why? Another gimmick. You get the horse to do something completely unnatural. I've seen some absolutely bizarre things even in training. Some ridiculous harnesses that strap the whole horse up all over from one end to the other to teach it how to carry itself, or to try and get certain gaits that are completely unnatural for the horse. Again, a gimmick, a nonsense, hundreds of dollars spent on something you don't need to get the horse to do something it should never be doing in the first place. Another one is tie downs. And I just recently got into a conversation with somebody about this, and they had some absolutely silly notions and justifications for the use of tie downs. Even though they don't use one themselves, they were defending barrel racers because almost every barrel racer, not all, but almost every, uses a tie down. And, actually I had two different people telling me different things. One said, oh, well, a tie down doesn't actually stop the head. They can still lift their head if they really want to. Well, if that's the case, why are you putting one on? Really? My question is, why is the horse throwing its head around in the first place? Why do you need that tie down? Either it's, there's a couple different reasons for using tie downs I've heard. One is to keep the horse's head down. Now, for real world roping and stuff like that, okay, that almost makes sense, but, you can still teach a horse to keep its head down anyhow. You don't have to use a tie down on it. But at least there's a legitimate application there. In the real world, roping calves, they don't want the horse's head coming up while they're swinging the rope and ended up hitting the horse in the head with the rope. That kind of makes sense. But again, proper training, the horse's head stays down. The one that was absolutely ludicrous, defied all the laws of physics and everything else, was somebody told me for barrel racing, they put a tie down on to help the horse balance because it gives it something to push against. And that is about as silly as telling somebody that they can pick themselves up by their shoelaces. Because when the horse's body weight is tied to its own body weight, there's nothing there for balance. It's not like, can you lean on yourself? No, you can't. It's just not physically possible. And they also tried telling me that the horse's head and neck weight wasn't significant enough to affect the horse's balance, and they didn't need to have it free in order to balance themselves. Well, this horse would tell a different story, and so would every horse I've ever ridden. If you give them their head, they're much more sure-footed. They don't trip as often. And I'm going to do another video on that, is some of the many causes of tripping. And there's a lot of them, and humans cause them all almost. It's very rare that a horse will actually trip on its own without human interference. But that's just a couple of items. Tie downs, bits, sliders, spurs, all gimmicks, and they're all compensation for poor horsemanship and poor training. They have no legitimate use, no purpose whatsoever in the real world that I can see. And even those that argue in favor of them and advocate them can't give me a good reason. The one that tried explaining that the horse needed to have a tie down for barrel racing to give it balance, I says, well, please explain that one a little better, because it didn't make sense to me. Well, they never did. They just started making sarcastic remarks and telling me how stupid I was because I didn't know anything about barrel racing. They have no idea how much I actually do know about barrel racing and how silly it is. And horses suffer, horses get hurt doing these things. And a lot of it's caused by people and the way they do things. And, I just don't like, if you got to put a Band-Aid on your horsemanship with a gimmick, you're doing something wrong. And nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear the truth that they're wrong. And I said that a long time ago, that one of the keys to good horsemanship is being willing to be wrong. And that doesn't mean, intentionally being wrong. I mean, you have to be willing to admit when you're wrong. So, if I have a problem with this horse, or any horse for that matter, I got to look at what I'm doing. I'm not looking at the gimmicks and tools I'm using, because I'm not using any. And I'm not going to blame the horse. I'm not going to blame the way it's trained because I trained it. I'm going to blame it on me because I'm the one that has to communicate with this animal. I'm the one that has to treat it properly. I have to consider what's best for it, and I have to, do what needs to be done in the best, most humane possible fashion without resorting to Band-Aids, gimmicks and gadgets that just compromise my horsemanship. And, even benign things like the bumper spurs, you get used to using them, you take them off, you can't ride, because you don't know how to cue your horse without, keeping your foot perfectly straight and having those things on. It's a crutch. All of these things are crutches and take away from good horsemanship. So gimmicks, tools, and gadgets. I don't care if it's a bit, tied down, spurs, shoes, special shoes, this, that, and the other thing. There's the list is very long. There's more than just those items, but I just thought I'd go into a few things. We aren't going to threaten the horse with pain, with a bit, with a whip, with a stick. We aren't going to, threaten it with pain in the halter. We're going to use good horsemanship to get what we want out of this horse. And if that doesn't work, well, then I'm doing something wrong. and it's my responsibility. It's my fault. I don't need a tool or gimmick or gadget to fix it because the horse isn't the problem. I am. Okay? Accept responsibility and don't rely on crutches and gimmicks and gadgets to get the job done. Okay? Have a good day, folks.